Today, I feel like revisiting a property I've had a lot to talk about in the past regarding villains. Both of course in terms of actual villains and perceived roles in what this particular story pertains to. Where of course it has to be Wreck-It Ralph being the most interesting story Disney has ever created in terms of both the classic original and its butchered awful sequel. Of course gladly in this case we will not be talking about that too much as it goes against what the title of this video is supposed to talk about and more for what it should always be remembered for in a modern Disney character. Where Wreck-It Ralph absolutely remains to be a perfect Disney hero in the most imperfect of ways when you take a look at his journey in the film and the world that moved around him. Because the main thing you need to understand about stories like this is how that there is more than meets the eye, the layers that makes us unique, and the good that goes underappreciated by our peers ever so often. That what could be bad is actually good, and what is actually good is actually bad. A statement that makes total sense if you know what I'm talking about in both Turbo and Ralph in that conversation, where after focusing on how good of a twist villain King Candy was, came to time to truly appreciate Ralph as a hero of this very film. I mean, I know I've talked about him a lot in previous videos and the other ones like the sequels itself, but I feel the need to actually talk more about him positively to remember him for what he actually brings. That he should be celebrated today as a great Disney character even during the times they soullessly butcher his character and many others of their own brands. I mean, if you think about it, he's hardly ever featured as a character in their own parks. I mean sure, they might have had him from time to time, but they don't celebrate him as often as the endless line of Frozen characters and other lands because of that damn bottom line that they need. The more popular or billion-dollar successes that they have with the music or whatever gets promoted more so than other underrated classics that we usually associate them with, especially in the realm of gaming that they never do a good job at all. But speaking in terms of Wreck-It Ralph, we finally begin talking about him with the villain group that he's a part of and what he's done for the past 30 years, playing the villain of his very game Fix-It Felix Jr. The interesting behind the scenes portion of the world where gaming is a basic job for them to do to entertain us. But what we learn with him as a character is far removed from the definition of a villain that Disney usually describes and more of a man trapped in a role he doesn't want to do where he expresses to the Badanon group that he doesn't want to be the bad guy anymore. Which of course, knowing the rules of the film and going turbo, that is actually not allowed as it changes the program and results in the demise of the very game you're a part of and the characters. We learn in this world that you're supposed to play the role that you were created for and not to actually try to circumvent such process by any means that results in your absolute destruction. But as we go in the story, we do get and understand such a perspective when your life is unrewarding, going underappreciated by his own peers in the video game, especially by the likes of this asshole named Gene, where nothing is wanted from the guys who do play the villain, that they're supposed to be the bad guy and nothing more, and never celebrated for such. But his character just plays the role he was designed for, but definitely has more to him that just wants to be acknowledged. This is where the beginning actually plays an important part for the entire story with the other recognizable video game characters like Zangief, where he makes this great statement that you are a bad guy, but that doesn't mean you are a bad guy. That he finds enjoyment that he's able to do these stuff that makes him, him. Where basically he does mean, just like Zombie said, that you must learn to love you and not care about labels being either good or bad. That you are strong as yourself. It's an epiphany that Ralph struggles to understand at this point, saying that this statement that he doesn't want to be bad. Where the truth is the fact that he actually wants to be acknowledged but finds it nowhere to be found when people fear and reject him, especially during his 30th birthday just like the rest of the entire game. It's not that he doesn't want to play the role he's been because that's what he's good at, that's his purpose that he was designed for with the talents he has, but no one wants to acknowledge him for that. Where of course they celebrate the actual hero of the game being Fix-It Felix Jr., where it just makes much more sense for this type of story serving as a mediator who cares about the neutral party grounds, having someone who just is generally good-hearted and cares about everyone else, including Ralph in this regard, having a town that just actually adores him and just hates Ralph for that obvious design that anyone would associate them with. But that's just more of him wanting to be loved and recognized for who he is and what he wants to do, being on top of the cake instead of at the bottom, being tossed out like trash, being pushed out by Gene by the fact that he does not get the medal or the gold that proves he should be rewarded as much as anyone else, which honestly shouldn't happen because he is a part of the game just as much as anyone would be part of an act or part of a job. You get celebrated for performing your role, but he's not. He's just vilified just like that because he has to play this entire role his entire life.
Because you're just the bad guy who wrecks the building.
Where it is through this forced view that makes him a bad guy, that ruins things in their opinion, that sets him off to actually become a hero for the sake of the story. That he's pushed to prove himself to be good so he can be celebrated alongside them.
You know what? I'm gonna win a medal.
That people's oblivious attention to the smaller surface level details never really give anyone the benefit of the doubt and a chance to shine to be who they truly are. A message that applies beyond the labels of the villains or heroes of life itself, if you know what I mean. And thinking about that point more in his journey as a hero makes the video game aspect of this film so timeless despite the times and technology that changed along, and why the sequel like Ralph Breaks the Internet failed to understand that and instead aged badly as a reversal, as that was the entire focus of what you knew about the internet that made the story rather than the story and the characters themselves that we see here. Stories that take place in a specific time period can still live on if the focus is on a general idea that applies to humans no matter what age we are, going back thousands of years and what we know in our own hearts. Where he goes on to find this new fact by going to the new game of Hero's Duty to find that point himself, even if the game is still about the player getting the medal and not somebody like Ralph yet again. Then once again, someone else is supposed to get that and not him. Where he does go turbo, but not in the selfish way that we would know later on when we did learn about his character. I mean, because of that, I also appreciate the fact that they named the game Hero's Duty to really drill in that in order to get the point of the character trying to help somebody other than the man we call attention to who's wrecking everything up, even when he's not in his own game that he's supposed to be by the fact that the game is now called out of order when he's gone out. And the point to really focus on in this part is how he doesn't understand what it means to be a hero just yet. I know this video calls him a perfect hero, but it actually doesn't look like he is one at this point, doing the wrong part of the journey, but how it actually shapes him to become an actual one as we learn later on, and what it takes to become a hero. Because again, you understand what he wants and what he's going through at this moment to be validated, visualizing the praise that he should be warranted by his own works beyond who he is, but just hasn't quite earned it yet, and only allows it to spiral into chaos when the Cybug travels with him all the way to Sugar Rush. And this is where the story actually finally begins, when he meets Vanellope for the first time, setting two characters apart, aiming for one simple goal, but have more on the inside of their hearts. Because when we meet here, we meet an annoying glitch who lives around the outskirts of the game and the race where everything takes place, wanting to be a part of that, messing with Ralph. Again, like Ralph, she wants to be a part of the game that she is, and to be acknowledged from the good graces of everyone ruled under King Candy, where I don't actually have to explain much about him since I've already covered him, except for the fact that he is the reliant perception that he is the good face of the game Sugar Rush, now contrasted with these two misfits right here, who finally connect after seeing the others bully her for who she actually is, for the glitch and disability she has, how she promises to actually help him get the medal back if she wins so they both get what they want. Where over the course of making a new race car for her, he understands more about her as a character and what she can't do, compared to him in that regard of going out of his game to get what he wants.
I sleep in these candy wrappers. I like bundle myself up like a little homeless lady.
By yourself? All this garbage around you?
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone here says I'm just a mistake and that I wasn't even supposed to exist. What do you expect?
What you see here in his progressive journey with Vanellope is the understanding and encouraging faith that makes Ralph into such a great hero that looks beyond the surface circumstantial view. Again, there's more than meets the eye that is important to learn for the characters and what a true hero really is. But of course, things have to test Ralph when King Candy manipulates Ralph with his actual medal that he got, giving him what he wanted all this time while helping her and proving himself. One where you start to see the greater conflict within him to shape as the main character, knowing he doesn't like Candy because he acted quite villainous towards him at the beginning with his own Rue, and this new relationship he's discovered to help her achieve and become the best that she could be for players around the world, where you know and see that he believes that she can become great, believing in someone that is similar to him in some way and deserves more but is never given a chance because of what they are, especially by the fact that King Candy twists the fact that they don't hate her as the reason why she can't race, but the fact that her glitch will, thinking her disability of glitching will cause people to turn away and the game getting shut down, putting him in a position of fear and safety to try and care for her own survival. This conflict is probably the most important point for his character because he now has what he wants again, but is also tasked with another point, helping with his new best friend by saving her through Turbo's definition of trying to get her out of the race or letting her win the race and then potentially dying as a result, trying to just talk her out of it while receiving a special medal made by Vanellope in case they don't make it that says, "You're my hero." And this is where a heart-shaped cookie that says this becomes the most important thing in the entire film, more than any medal that claims the title of hero because of what was shown. The one that represents Ralph as the true hero that he is, but just doesn't know it yet because he's torn by a nasty villain out for his own self-preservation. Because even though he has this medal, he doesn't immediately abandon her and tries to convince her to stay away for her own safety. That Turbo knew well he could have formed a relationship of some sort and wanted him gone by some means, knowing just how to break him. Where unfortunately, he does listen to that fact and goes ahead to destroy the car, breaking her heart and calling him the thing he never wanted to be.
You really are a bad guy.
This is the moment that breaks everything we learned about. The journey he took that was now ruined by one simple action based upon the movie's themes on perception. All for the good of her survival in this case, rather than what others might see in the eye of reward from King Candy for the physical definition of a hero that he attained and frankly stole. And that's why I can't really take that title away from him yet in this moment. Even though you might say because he just did this and call him a bad guy too, he still hasn't earned it quite yet as a hero. He still is learning on this way that is done out of love that his character demonstrated from beginning and wanted to be a part of the group and not labeled something mean that nobody wants to be. It is one that is done out of clear regret that he never wanted to do at this point, even when he got that medal, where it's hit harder by the fact that everyone has to evacuate the game because of his own actions back home, making everything he did so meaningless and useless for what actions had been demonstrated. To be who he always was as the bad guy who gets nothing out of life and only there to wreck it. But then of course it turns and twists like the rest of the story to reveal that Vanellope was actually a part of the game on the side of the console, causing him to go back and find the truth that he was lied to, solidifying his character that showed he does care much more about her now and what he learned along the way that was more important than a medal, showcasing that he had where he wouldn't still have been praised for having either way, because he still stole it from another game, especially when he meets Felix again in the prison to apologize for what he did, who also still begins to understand Ralph while not being overly upset because of his programming. And then of course getting Vanellope out again, bringing her back and apologizing to her to get to the race as fast as possible, knowing who she is meant to be, validating his earlier opinions of who she is in the eyes of the player. Where again, it was never about Ralph wanting to be the perceived hero just like Felix, just wanting to be recognized and doing good by the friends and family he had. But again, that's still only one sin absolved, as the Cybug growth is the real next deal to deal with on his journey to get here, as it causes chaos in Sugar Rush and everyone has to actually evacuate this time. Where when she doesn't actually make it because the Cybugs take over, he finally decides to do something to make it right for all of his mistakes and sins, knowing how to stop them once and for all. Where you have to highlight this final battle between him and Turbo as the moment to become who he was meant to be, more than any moment in his life or in this movie that demonstrates why he was chosen to be that main character, and of course the hero of the entire film. Where at the beginning, it does seem simple enough to break the Mentos to explode without thinking of the harm that might come his way, but once Candy does step into the role, it does increase those stakes much higher and parallels that are more important to learn. One that makes it to a point where he has to sacrifice himself to save the others. Because at this moment, we have learned so much that have shaped both men, both good and bad, for the ones that went rogue from their games. Where one was a hero who became a villain who destroyed everything in his path, while the other is the perceived villain who wants to become a hero and restore everything. Where we as audience now understand what is happening in these two stories, learning that this establishes what it takes to become a hero in any case. The final step from above when Ralph finally decides to release himself from the grip and recites the Badanon speech at the beginning.
It's game over for both of you!
No. Just for me. I'm bad, and that's good. I will never be good, and that's not bad. There's no one I'd rather be than me.
And this is when he finally becomes a hero. A perfect hero who learned to live for others rather than oneself, or more prove to us who he really was as a person. And the reason I say this is because of the fact it circles way back to the beginning of the film, where he never said this very speech at all, feeling depressed to be honest with who he was, but now understanding what his important role was for others he helped outside of that job. Where that cookie does now play a big part of this, that says you're my hero, where it means more than a medal could ever say in just saying hero in hero's duty. Which it all points back to the meaning of just because you are a bad guy, does not mean you are a bad guy, where the meaning now expands much more to Ralph, who understands he can never be the glorified good guy with the actions he took to this point that almost destroyed everything, but how his ability as the bad guy with his powers can be used for the good of others, saving Vanellope, who knows that Ralph is our own personal hero, to be enjoyed by those who come to play the Felix game for a simple fun time that most can come together. A true hero doesn't come from the simple fact that he's objectively a good person that you admire on the surface just because, but by the quality of his character to act out of his desire for compassion, the sacrifice for his love of the other fellow. Because again, it's just about how he always wanted to be treated better and be a part of his own game's community, but never got the chance to be accepted because his role was just in fact a villain, where he set out to prove them wrong, but also finally learned to accept himself and understand what the role of a hero truly is in good or bad situations. And you don't necessarily have to be either to be considered as such in that journey if their story fits. Villains of course can be heroes to those who adore them, and vice versa, where Ralph finally wrecked both modes to be enjoyed on either side, with good still there and bad still being defeated. And because of that, he's rewarded with the hero's welcome by Vanellope, saving him and restoring the game to its roots, with the happily ever after where people back home begin to celebrate him for who he truly is. Things change for the better because now everyone understands, celebrating him and still playing the same role without being degraded as such, where it does circle back to the beginning with Zangief again, happy to play the guy who crushes or wrecks things with his new friend, that he has a reason to fight for that role he's always been destined to play. When I first saw this movie, I truly loved seeing this story unfold, where growing up, I truly loved understanding it even more that makes it emotional for who we are individually, to go above and beyond the perceptions others have. I mean, of course in real life, we aren't programmed to be villains or heroes like the game characters we create, but we certainly can show that we are much more than the bottom line that others don't appreciate on a surface view. That our very roles in life do have a purpose, and that purpose should be appreciated for what makes us, us. And Ralph truly showed that side very well, and a testament to modern movies beyond the simple fairy tale that Disney aspect has presented at that very time, where it will be continued to be held high for generations to come, and the mold for future heroes to be shaped. Because after all, there's no one I'd rather be than me, and that's good. And I'm all done, so goodbye.
Turns out I don't need a medal to tell me I'm a good guy. Because if that little kid likes me, how bad can I be?